Grow your practice, grow your wealth, grow your impact. Find out how to spend less time in the dental chair and more time on the things you love.
Welcome back to the Dental Wealth Podcast. Glad to have you back, ready for another episode. I've got a lucky quarter today. And the lucky quarter is here because of the fact that I've decided I had two topics I wanted to talk about. I couldn't decide which one I wanted to. So I decided I'd bring a quarter. So I guess in your head you can guess which or root for a side, I guess, so to speak. So, all right, so heads will make that, I got to talk about this like leadership and how to truly, it's about attracting talent. So let's call it leadership and talent is heads. And tails is marketing. So I want to talk to you about some marketing concepts that I think are important. Now, some of you already have your favorites, but I'm going to flip this coin and I'm going to try on the camera. You can see it here. I'm going to try not to drop this quarter or fling it across the studio. So we'll see. Heads, leadership, tails, marketing. Okay. So here we go. I have no idea what's going to land. All right. Now, are you rooting in your head for what you want? Like, are you rooting in your head for what you want? You got to be rooting for it, okay? We need the collective power of the people saying leadership to like collectively get that power going, and then the collective people of the marketing people to come together to see if you can force the universe to put gravitational forces on this quarter to get your way. All right, here we go. Ready? 1, 2. I need like a drum roll or something. Okay, here we go. Ready? All right, and tails it is. Marketing it is. Okay. So, all right, there's lucky quarter. So we'll talk about the next concept next time, which my notes are about that subject. So we'll just close this book or keep it open if I want to make some notes. But so here's a marketing concept that I want to talk about. And so will you do me a favor and grab me a pen? I might do some notes here. I might do a little bit of math while I'm here. So thank you. So I've got amazing people in the studio with me. So they're supporting the Dental Wealth Podcast. So thank you. So here's the marketing thing I want to throw at you. Now, there's a little bit of an advanced conversation. So it's a little bit more than 101. But I want you to hear what I have to say on this. Okay. Here's what I have to say. Now, the first thing I'm going to say is this, and it's going to kind of explain it both ways. You've maybe heard me say this before, but I want you to write it down if you've never heard me say this. The person who can spend the most to acquire a new patient wins. The person who can spend the most to acquire a new patient wins every single time. And what you want to do, I was on it, by the way, what prompted this? I have to tell you what prompted this. I was going through LinkedIn the other day and I was going through some feed and I saw a dental person and they put up the spreadsheet and it was like, it made me laugh a little bit because it like had 482 categories to track and it had like profitability per the profitability per the service from the marketing effort. It just went into like these, you would literally need a full-time person who did nothing more but mathematics all day long to use this spreadsheet. And the fact is most dentists would never, even if they had somebody full-time, I don't think that person would have filled out the spreadsheet. It almost needed like a CFO type person to sit around all day long to track these numbers. And so I thought it was a little silly, but then the question is, okay, well, but Eric, I gotta be tracking something. So what should I track? Because marketing matters. One of the biggest mistakes in dental is that people don't market. Like I've never seen it in my life, how people are scared to market. Now, why don't people market? By the way, to give you, if you don't market, let me give you a little bit of, maybe I'll be on your side a little bit. Not much, but a little bit. Like there's a confidence that happens, okay? Look, people think that all of a sudden you wake up and you have confidence, okay? By the way, I'm getting to acquisition here in a second, but in the number I want you to track. But I want to make this point, which is that people think that ultimately speaking, that you just wake up one day and you're just confident about marketing. Like you all of a sudden you hire a marketing company, and then they tell you they're going to get all these amazing leads. By the way, they think I'm a dentist online, so I get the same ads as you. Like I'm 482 patients in 12 minutes or something. You know, I see the ads. But ultimately speaking, so you hire somebody and they tell you just be confident. You must trust me. We can get these new patients to come your way, and trust me. And our new system is guaranteed foolproof to drive patients in. And people tell you to have confidence that that's going to work. Well, that's not how it works. By the way, it's not how anything works in life. The truth is that you have to get get yourself the courage to take this leap, because it's a leap of faith. Let's be honest. Now I'm going to teach you on this podcast why it's not necessarily a leap of faith. And I'm going to show you, I'm going to give you a number to track and why it's not a leap of faith, but it's what it feels like, right? It feels like this leap of faith. Like, I'm going to trust this person, and I hope I don't get burned. And so then people tell me, you have the confidence. We're going to definitely do this for you. But you don't have the confidence. In fact, you're not going to have the confidence until what? Till the results come. And until you see the results, and by the way, most people don't give it the time to get the results anyhow. They do a campaign for 1 week and they go, it didn't work, which is not how marketing works. I was talking to one of the top marketing people in dental one day, and we were just talking about how long it takes campaigns to work. But ultimately speaking, you don't have confidence right away. The average dentist spends 1.6% on marketing when they should be spending somewhere around 6% of total revenues. That's right. They should be spending somewhere around 6% of total revenues, unless they don't have the capacity, and then they can pull back and focus that revenue on capacity. But ultimately speaking, you've got to be looking at around 6%. Now, here's the cool part. Okay, so let me give you some credit. You don't have confidence. By the way, as I'm talking about marketing, you don't have confidence because you're like, look, I have to go get the capability. I have to get the team about. I got to take this jump of faith. When I take this leap of faith, then I hire the company because I know I've got to market. And then I take the leap of faith, and I'm going to trust these people that they're going to be able to do this job. And then it is until the results come that I actually have confidence that's going to work. And do I give it enough time? But here's what I want to do. I want to focus on, so there's some credit on why you don't feel confident. By the way, you have to get the results over a period of time before you feel confident, and that's why you feel bad. But here's the thing I want you to focus on. I want you to focus on the acquisition of a patient. Now, you got to be putting enough money in marketing for this to work, okay? By the way, I've told people before, if you ever work Shark Tank, watch them. They'll say, what's your acquisition cost? You have to know how much it's costing you to get a new patient. And it's so important that you know that. You've got to know how much it costs to get a new patient. Now, here's the catch. Here's what I'm going to tell you. You want to spend more money in marketing. And in fact, you have to get the patients you want. So what I mean by that is let's just say that in the United States, acquisition cost for a new patient is somewhere around $117 as that's the average. So let's go back and say, let's look at that for a second. Okay, well, it's pretty easy to do the math. We simply say, okay, well, if I want, so let's say $6,000, I'm going to divide that by 117, and that's going to give me 51 patients. So what I'm telling you is this. If you do not spend $6,000, you're going to have a hard time getting 50 patients. That's right. Now, that marketing, by the way, might be spent internally. It might be on a referral contest. It might be some type of referral campaign. It might be internal marketing to some kind of special you're running to your current patients. But ultimately speaking, if your acquisition is 117, which is the average, if you do not spend that money, you will not get those patients. That's the way it works. And that's why the saying in marketing, I didn't make it up. It's the saying in business, the person who can spend the most to acquire a new patient wins. Because the truth is, if I can bury you in marketing, I win. Period. Now, it doesn't say I want to, but you got to change your attitude around marketing. See, we think of this marketing as an expense because the accountants have run and talk to us. By the way, the accountants have spent way too much time educating dentists, and accountants control taxes and expenses, not business growth. They never have. And we allow people who focus on expenses to talk about our business. They don't focus on acquisition costs. Acquisition cost is not an accounting school. That's not what they do, okay? And so as an MBA, I'm trying to educate you and say, look, there's actually part of this, believe it or not, that you say, look, I actually have to spend this money. Like, I literally went back to my marketing people at Tower Leadership, and I was like, if you can't figure out how to spend this much money a month, then I'm going to fire you. Now, what I said was, if you can't spend my money, I'm going to fire you, because it means that you are not be able to be efficient with my money because I know acquisition cost. Believe it or not, the same thing happens in dental. Like, you want to spend the money. Now, ultimately speaking, you might get to a place where you have so many patients coming in that you can't see them all, and then we have a capacity issue. And by the way, one of the ways to increase capacity is to increase fees. Those of you who are wanting to get out of network, just something for you to pay attention to. So we look at this and go, I want you to think about marketing totally different. So when you think about marketing for a minute, I want you to think, I don't have the confidence around marketing. And that's okay. And that's okay. Like, quit listening to everyone tell you should just be confident about marketing. No, you shouldn't. You shouldn't be confident because you're spending money. You're investing. It's not an expense, but you're investing money. And you haven't, if you've never really committed to marketing, like really committed to it, then it's probably going to scare you shitless. It just is. It's going to scare you because you're going to be like, oh my gosh, I'm about to put out $7,000 or whatever the number is, and I have no guarantee of results. And so that's going to scare you, and you have to be courageous to get over that hump. You have to. Like, I'm going to give you the complete credit on that. That's normal. It's normal when you go to invest that kind of capital to be fearful. And so what we do is, so when I look at these Excel spreadsheets, and by the way, you have to commit for a period of time. You can't just commit 1 month, okay? It's a concerted effort. Like, you might commit for 6 months. And so typically when we commit to a campaign, in marketing we call them campaigns. When we commit to a campaign, we ultimately are committing so much capital over a period of time. And the number that I want you to focus on, I want you to divide how much you spent into, like, I want you to figure out how many new patients, and divide that into how much money you spent. And it's going to tell you how much money it costs you to acquire a new patient. And then you multiply. See, once you figure that number out, and remember statistics. This is statistics. So what ends up happening is we're creating a big enough sample size. So as we create the sample size being big enough, then we just basically go back and use mathematics and we say, look, if I know statistically speaking that it cost me $117, and I know statistically how much revenue, average revenue per patient comes in every single time, which also is easy to figure out, but it's in a different podcast. But if we do that, then what ends up happening is we start to go, wow, this is a pretty magical thing. By the way, private equity knows this number. Private equity knows this number. DSOs know this number. Do you think DSOs don't know this, like upside down and sideways? And private equity doesn't know this upside down. Yeah, every major business knows this. This is like an MBA 101 concept, is you have to understand your acquisition costs, and you have to understand how much it's costing you to get a new patient. And if you spend zero money in marketing, and by the way, for some of you, like, well, I haven't spent any money in marketing. I have all these new patients. That means you missed opportunity. That means your business isn't even close to the potential that it could be then. If you're spending no money and still getting a lot of patients, that means you need an acquisition cost. That means what ends up happening is you're missing out so much potential. And you should be growing the potential of your practice. And you're not. You want to talk about dental wealth. I mean, if that's the case, if you've put yourself in like the right area, that's a growing area, for instance, and there's no dentist around, you might end up having, 130 patients a month without even marketing, just by being in the presence. But I would tell you then you're not maximizing your business model, not even close to it. Does that make sense? Like, if you have that ability, then why don't you just double that, right? And opening capacity to meet the need. This is kind of an MBA concept. Maybe I should have flipped the corner to heads. Maybe that would have been easier of a concept. But I want you to hear me on this, which is your acquisition cost should be somewhere. So when you look at this spreadsheet that's online, so I saw this LinkedIn spreadsheet, as I was telling you, And it has 482 metrics on that you should track on your marketing. And I'm telling you, like, that's just crap to sell you too much stuff right now. How about we get like the first metric down? Like once you get that metric down, because here's the problem with some of that analysis. So like we get this spreadsheet. I can see the Excel spreadsheet now. It's like the first one's like newspaper ad. And the second one is like a billboard, church plant, whatever. We keep going down the list. And then how many new patients, because that's what people tell you. Like we'll tell you how many patients that you got from this thing, from that thing, from the other thing. And we'll tell you which ones were most efficient. And by the way, they're just trying to sell you something. And so what happens is you start to like really remember you get what you measure. So now you're measuring like, well, I got 5 from this and nothing from that and 3 from this and 12 from that. And so what you start to do is, by doing this math, you start eliminating things that all of a sudden, well, I didn't get anything from this and I didn't get anything from that, so I'm going to cancel this, I'm going to cancel that, which, by the way, there is a time and place for that, but not on the 101 conversation, not even on the 102 conversation, because ultimately speaking, the first thing I got to do is figure out, is my marketing working? So there's a guy in here in Atlanta who does real estate. His billboards are everywhere. And so my point of that is to say, like, if you analyze billboards, and if you analyze every billboard he does, okay, he is everywhere, by the way. He is like everywhere. It's literally the 11 Alive, like his name studios. If he wants me to say his name, he can pay me. But it's his name is everywhere. And now, if he was to analyze and he could figure out who came from what billboard and what ad, he would probably cancel half his billboards. If he analyzed every billboard, he would probably cancel like half his billboards because he'd be like, that didn't work. It's only the ones on Interstate 75. And that's not true. The truth is they saw him when they got home. They saw him on this billboard. They saw him on that billboard. They saw him on the next billboard. They saw him on the next billboard. Then they heard him on the radio. And then they ultimately made a phone call, right? And that's why when people call your office and they say, well, how did you hear about Dr. Smith? And the person goes, right? Saw your website, which isn't true anyhow. And so they can't even tell you where they found you from, right? Or this happened to me, by the way. I was calling a dermatologist, and I was calling the dermatologist, and it's interesting that I had met this doctor at multiple events, and that's how I met him. And ultimately speaking, I got a thing in the mail, and I opened it up. It was one of those like community mailers, and I opened it up, and on the inside cover was his ad. Now, when I called the office to schedule an appointment, they said, how did you hear about us? And what I said was, I've known him for years and I've met him multiple times. But that's not what they wanted to know. They wanted to know that I saw them in that ad, right? Does that make sense? And so what I'm getting at is this. Is your marketing working as a whole? Is your marketing working as a whole? The first thing I want you to do is go macro, then go micro. Don't start off micro. You will cannibalize your whole damn marketing effort. Don't start off micro. The worst damn thing you can do, see, I'm a little expletives out here. I get fired up. Like the worst thing you could do is grab this guy's spreadsheet and start going micro. You will get paralysis, and by analysis, you haven't even built the confidence yet to market, and yet you're going to take a spreadsheet that is literally going to drive you insane and make you have the confidence you were trying to build. It will destroy every bit of confidence that you possibly could have had. Don't start there. Start macro first. Go macro, and then we can go micro. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is we want to say, look, first of all, I got to understand what's my acquisition cost. Like I got to know that number to the T. I got to look at it monthly. I got to look at it all the time. I got to know exactly, like, boom, put it on the wall. It cost me $117 to get somebody in this door. Period. By the way, most of that's not actually looking at insurance. If we actually had an insurance adjustments, it'd probably be a hell of a lot more than that. But let's just use this outside marketing and say, okay, it's $117. So if that's the case, because by the way, insurance adjustments is definitely a marketing cost. But let's put that aside for a moment. So if we look at this 117, boom, we know that number. And if that's your number in dental, I'm letting you know on this podcast, if you're seeing 117, 117, 117, 117, 117, 117, that means your marketing is effective. Now, you might have some standard deviations. Okay, you might be 110, you might be 127. Obviously, if you do implants, a lot of implant works, your acquisition cost might be, because you're running these implant ads, your acquisition might be 230. But your average revenue is much higher. If you're an orthodontist, your acquisition is going to be higher, but then your average revenue is going to be higher. So it all balances out, right? And so what happens is we get to know that number, that acquisition cost. Boom, I know it to the T. Then I can start making micro adjustments and seeing what it does to my acquisition cost. Does that make sense? So what ends up happening is we go scalpel. Then we can actually start, once we figure out our acquisition costs, then, by the way, we have to have the confidence to know that I've got to be putting that money, I've got to put that money into marketing. And when I put that money into marketing, so remember, like, you can't realize your acquisition's $117 and then go, well, I just don't want to put a lot of money in marketing. No, you have to spend the money. If you want the 50 patients, if you want the 100 patients, you've got to put the money out there, because that's the only way the patients are going to walk in the door. They don't just magically walk in the door, by the way. They don't just like, I want another 100 patients this month. And woo, look at that. We just got 100 patients. That's not how this works. You actually have to go get an acquisition cost. So by the way, business is a science. It's mathematics. And so we use mathematics as I tell people, like, what do you think people do at business schools? Like, what do you think we do? Like, we don't play just Jenga. Like, I mean, this is actually, like, there's ways to do this. And so I'm giving you, like, a hack, so to speak, right? Like, this is, like, I want you to know this. So the first thing we do is go, okay, it's $117. I know if I want 50 patients roughly, it's going to cost me $6,000. So I have to spend that if I want the 50 patients. If I don't spend the $6,000, I'm not going to get the 50 patients. If I ultimately know that my acquisition cost should be 117 and it's 162, then I say my marketing is statistically ineffective. It's ineffective. Now, there could be other factors to look at, but it's probably ineffective compared to what the average is. Now, my average revenue might be higher, so that might make up for it. But ultimately speaking, if it's 94, then I know that I'm more efficient than the market, right? Normal distribution of a curve. We can look at which way it goes, and we can just basically say, where am I compared to the average? And then you want to spend that money. And what ends up happening is this. Then we start making the micro tweaks. We start making those micro moves and start to saying, is my ad spend more efficient in Google ads versus a postcard mailer? And then you can start getting into these micro tweaks. And then you can start getting into profitability per service and how marketing affects that and all these other things. But I would encourage you not to start there. Don't start there. Own this. Like, if you don't want to own, someone in your practice has to, but you got to own this number and know this, like, as part of marketing. Like, you've got to know these numbers and you've got to know them down to the science, and you've got to get this stuff down if you're going to really truly own this stuff, right? So what I want to encourage you on this podcast is this, okay? I got fired up on this podcast today. I feel like my flipping of the coin felt like it was like lighthearted, and like I got really serious today. So here's what I want you to think about. Okay, so I'm gonna kind of breathe for a second, Eric. Breathe. So look, I want you to understand this. Like, for whatever reason, I think it's because accountants ran business in dental for so long, and financial advisors and accountants told dentists what to do, which is why it was a disaster, and why businesses after 30 years were doing $1 million in revenue. Okay, it's the wrong people giving information. Okay, great people, don't take advice on your business. Okay, and so ultimately that's what ended up happening, and that's why we don't have the right numbers. And so that's why we were scared of marketing, because some accountant told us, like, it's an expense to your corporation, and we didn't understand what that meant, and felt like it hurt. And so we're way past that, right? DSOs, multi-doctor, locations, and 2020 is dictated, like, look, you got to get past all that stuff. And it's normal when you go to market. If you don't market, look, if you do market, like let's challenge you on your numbers and what else should we be looking at. But if you're going to market and you're starting to aggressively market, you have to understand that there is a natural tendency to be afraid. And that's okay. Remember, I told you a few podcasts ago, fear is natural. Great entrepreneurs overcome the fear. So you go, okay, look, I'm not confident yet, but I am going to go ahead and make a commitment to this. And I'm going to make a commitment to this, and then I'm going to go hire a company who I feel can put this in place for me. I'm going to give it the chance that it needs. I'm not going to just kill it overnight because I didn't get 40 patients in 12 hours. And I'm going to give it the time it deserves because it does take multiple times. They say like today, it was that people needed to see your message 4 times. Like in the 90s or even early 2000s, it was 4 times they said someone had to see your ad. In 2014-15, they said that it was 16 times that someone needed to see your ad before they took action. Now the number is getting close to 28. That's a big difference, guys. It's a big difference, which means there's a lot of noise. And one of the reasons why I told so many people to market heavily during the COVID time is because everyone stopped marketing. So instantly you went from 28 to 4 again, and it's like, wow, all right. So you were able to bring that down. And by the way, it's still now down because people haven't marketed yet. They're starting to, but they haven't marketed back to the way they should be. So now you're back in the space of probably being at 16, but someone's got to see you a lot. And so you have to put the money out there. So don't feel bad if you don't have the confidence, and don't feel bad if you feel like you lack the capabilities. Everybody says, well, Eric, I want you to give me the silver bullet in marketing. Look, I've referred marketing agencies that for one client got, crazy numbers. And like I literally have, for instance, I have one doctor who used a company who got 124 patients, new patients in 24 hours. Literally had to shut off the campaign because they literally couldn't take that many patients right away. That same company for another client there wasn't much at all, right? Does that mean one works or the other? No, it means that basically speaking, we have to try multiple things, and everybody wants a silver bullet. But if we track acquisition cost and we look at multiple campaigns, some campaigns are going to work better than others. Some things are going to work for you better than others. Look, I've had somebody use a billboard and get over 200 new patients a month from a billboard, and I've had people who get 0 from a billboard. Okay, so the truth is that marketing is scary. I get that. Here I am scaring you at the end of the podcast, so don't get scared. What I'm saying is you have to put the money out there. And then when you track acquisition costs, by the way, marketing works. It does work. And it does work. And it takes a consistent effort over a period of time. And as you track acquisition costs, and like if you got to throw it up on the wall, track that one number, and then you'll know I gave you where you're supposed to be on average. Track that number. If you're in that number, that means you're in the range you need to be and you're doing well. You can tweak it if you need to, but that means you're right in that range. Then when you start to see confidently and you're in that range, you know you have to spend more money if you want new patients. Now, here's my disclaimer. There's a lot around this, guys. When we could talk about capacity, we could talk about fees, we could talk about, there's so much. This is a very complex conversation. At Tower Leadership, we go really deep into all this stuff, and there's a lot of different things to look at. I try to keep these podcasts to about 30 minutes. I'm at 28 minutes, right? So I could sit here for the next 5 hours and talk about marketing. But ultimately, I want you to get out of this podcast is this. Marketing is scary at first, and it is. Go hire a company or companies. Don't be afraid to hire multiple companies to diversify. You might try different people with different capabilities. Okay, some people are great at digital marketing. Some are not. I don't want you to go spend $30,000 on a website tomorrow. I want you to do things. And by the way, internal always works better than external. So maybe you go internal first. We commit to marketing. We commit to, but like I said, I will say the thing about the website. If someone just says, hey, let's go fix your website for $30,000, yes, I will tell you that's not where I want you to spend your money. But ultimately speaking, we might need different capabilities to allow us to reach different people. Maybe some of it's Facebooks, maybe some of it's a billboard, maybe some of it's direct, maybe some of it's an implant, magazine, depending on what you're trying to get done. And then let's track acquisition cost. And once you get that acquisition cost, then ultimately what will happen is you'll start to see the success of your campaign. When you see the success of your campaign, you will have confidence. When you have confidence, you'll be able to double down. Once you double down, you'll start to see revenues move, and then we start working into what do we do now. And that's the beauty of marketing, is when you start to master marketing, you start to doing it well, amazing things happen to your business. Hey guys, I hope you've enjoyed this podcast. I'm glad I flipped my quarter today. Look, one of the things I would tell you guys is this podcast, I'm lucky and blessed by your support. I see the numbers going up, literally daily. I mean, I think I'm shooting this, it's like September 8th when I'm actually shooting this. And here we are, like, just let you know, like the numbers just in the first 8 days of the month have like literally almost rivaled months in the past. I mean, the numbers are through the roof, and that's because of your support. And so, I appreciate your support, and I appreciate you listening and tuning in. I will tell you sometimes, go on YouTube and watch on YouTube. I tell you that over time because you'll see different reaction in my facial reactions. Look, a large part of communication is visual, so it's really good to have visual communication. Second thing I can tell you to do is like share this podcast, and I appreciate you guys doing that. But there's so many people, don't remember, abundance mindset says that you take something like this and you share it with somebody. Don't hoard this information. There's plenty of patience for everybody. There's plenty of abundance and resources for everybody. So share the information, like share that in the marketplace. Talk to people. Hey, I heard something on this podcast. I think you should listen to it. Boom, here's a link. Like, you'll feel better. Talk about the concepts that I'm talking about. That, look, if you don't understand, hey, reach out. Hey, Tower Leadership would love to just pick your brain on what you mean by that. So look, we're here to help, but ultimately speaking, like, I want you to take this information, I want you to rip it apart and think through it. How are you doing your business, and what could we be doing? When I say rip it apart, I mean analyze what you're utilizing this in your business and how you can utilize it. This is an MBA concept, but it's an MBA concept that I think you can handle. And once you get down, you'll be able to compete with anybody in the marketplace once you start realizing how all these things fit in together. So take this information, share it with a colleague, have a phone call, have a cup of coffee, and sit down and talk about it. I tell you what I would do with this podcast is I would have a regular meeting with somebody, and I would discuss these concepts. And whether it's 3 or 4 people, you can do it virtually. And hey, what should we be doing? And that's what this podcast was built, is to help, because I want to see you reach your full potential. So take this concept, share it, continue to share it. Thank you for your support. If you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe to the page. If you're listening to a podcast, hit subscribe so that you make sure you get the updates when they come out. And we're going to continue to bring you great content. My heart's in this. I care about you guys. I want to make sure you guys hit your potential. So thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.